She had exactly 90 seconds to infiltrate the terrorist compound and extract the intelligence before the building would be destroyed by an airstrike. And everyone in the special operations community knew the quiet analyst from small-town Ohio would never survive her first field mission. Staff Sergeant Rachel Torres crouched in the shadows outside the fortified compound in Syria, her heart pounding as enemy guards patrolled just meters away. Her team had been forced to abort the mission after their cover was blown, leaving her alone to complete what military intelligence called the most critical information-gathering operation of the decade. Rachel Torres had never looked like a special operations soldier. At 27, she stood 5 feet 5 inches with dark hair and brown eyes that seemed more suited to a university library than a battlefield. Her path to the elite military intelligence special operations unit had been unconventional, starting with a master's degree in Middle Eastern studies from Ohio State and a gift for languages that had caught the attention of Army recruiters. The Fort Bragg Special Operations Training course buzzed with testosterone and skepticism the day Rachel arrived. Master Sergeant Kyle "Iron" Patterson, a Delta Force veteran with 2 Bronze Stars and arms covered in combat deployment patches, looked her up and down with obvious disdain. "Command sent us a translator," he announced to the assembled candidates, his words dripping with contempt. "Hope she knows the difference between a textbook and a gunfight." The other trainees represented the cream of military special operations. There was Sergeant First Class Mike "Venom" Cooper, a former Ranger who could scale a 40-foot wall in under 30 seconds. Staff Sergeant Luis "Ghost" Mendez from the 82nd Airborne, whose stealth infiltration skills were legendary. And Sergeant Jake "Titan" Brooks, the Colonel's hand-picked recruit, who never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of his Special Forces lineage dating back to Vietnam. "Torres, you're up!" Patterson barked during the first physical assessment. The obstacle course was designed to eliminate candidates who couldn't handle the brutal physical demands of special operations. Standard completion time was 8 minutes. Mike had finished in 6:47. Luis managed 7:12. Jake clocked in at a respectable 7:38. Rachel approached the course methodically, studying each obstacle before attempting it. She analyzed the rope climb technique, calculated the optimal approach angles for the wall traverse, and planned her route through the tire maze. Other candidates used brute force and speed. Rachel used leverage and efficiency. Her time was 9 minutes and 18 seconds, the worst in the class. Patterson's face was red with frustration. "Torres, you just failed the first test. In a real operation, slow gets you killed and gets your teammates killed." The snickers from the other candidates were audible. Mike leaned over to Luis. Maybe she should stick to translating documents in a safe office somewhere. But Rachel had noticed something during her careful approach. The course was designed with multiple efficient paths that bypassed the most physically demanding obstacles. Her academic background in problem-solving had taught her to look for solutions that others missed. "Sergeant Patterson," she said quietly, "there's a more efficient route through the course that reduces physical demand by approximately 30%. Patterson's expression showed his skepticism. "The course is designed by Special Operations Command. There's only one way through it. Actually, if you approach the rope climb from the left side and use the support beam as a fulcrum, you can reduce the upper body strength requirement significantly. The wall traverse becomes easier if you use the corner brace that most people ignore." Patterson stared at her for a long moment. "Show me." Rachel demonstrated her alternative approach, using techniques that emphasized mechanical advantage over raw strength. Her second attempt took 7 minutes and 52 seconds, placing her in the middle of the pack despite her smaller frame. The room fell silent. She had cut over a minute from her time using methods that none of the other candidates had considered. Interesting, Patterson said grudgingly. But this isn't an engineering course. This is about survival under pressure. Week after week, the pattern continued. Rachel would struggle with the pure physical challenges, but excel at the analytical components. During weapons training, she couldn't match the upper body strength of her male counterparts, but demonstrated an intuitive understanding of ballistics and target analysis that impressed even the veteran instructors. Her real strength emerged during intelligence-gathering exercises. While other candidates focused on traditional infiltration and exfiltration techniques, Rachel's language skills and cultural knowledge allowed her to blend into civilian populations in ways that the obvious soldiers never could. During a simulated mission in a mock Middle Eastern village, Mike tried to gather intelligence by posing as a Western journalist. His approach was confident but culturally tone-deaf, and the role-playing villagers immediately identified him as military. Luis attempted a nighttime infiltration that was technically perfect but gained no useful intelligence. Jake relied on his commanding presence to intimidate sources, a technique that backfired when the villagers stopped cooperating entirely. Rachel's approach was completely different. She spent hours observing the village dynamics before making contact, identifying the social hierarchies and cultural patterns that would determine how information flowed. When she finally approached potential sources, she did so as a displaced refugee seeking help, a role that her appearance and language skills made completely believable. Within 2 hours, she had gathered more actionable intelligence than the other 3 candidates combined. She learned about guard rotations, weapons caches, and planned operations that the villagers had mentioned casually, assuming she was just another refugee woman seeking assistance. "How did you get them to trust you so quickly?" Patterson asked during the debrief. "I listened to their concerns first," Rachel replied. "People will share information with someone who understands their problems, but they'll hide it from someone who makes them feel threatened." But the other candidates weren't impressed. "Anyone can play dress-up and ask questions," Mike said dismissively. "Real special operations requires the ability to fight your way out when talking doesn't work." The culture at Fort Bragg was built around physical dominance and aggressive action. Rachel's quiet, analytical approach was seen as weakness rather than a different kind of strength. Patterson began calling her Professor in front of the other trainees, and the nickname stuck with obvious mockery intended. 3 months into training, everything changed during a complex hostage rescue exercise. The scenario involved infiltrating a terrorist compound to gather intelligence and rescue simulated hostages while avoiding detection by a sophisticated enemy force with modern surveillance equipment. The exercise was designed to test every skill the candidates had learned: physical infiltration, intelligence gathering, tactical decision-making, and extraction under pressure. It was the kind of mission that special operations forces faced regularly in real combat zones. Mike took point, leading the 4-person team with his usual aggressive confidence. The plan was straightforward: fast infiltration under cover of darkness, locate the hostages, gather whatever intelligence was available, and extract quickly before enemy reinforcements could respond. But as they approached the target compound, Rachel noticed details that made her uncomfortable. The guard rotations were too precise, the surveillance equipment too sophisticated for the briefed threat level. The compound's layout suggested a level of operational security that didn't match the intelligence profile they had been given. "Team leader, I'm seeing inconsistencies between the briefed threat assessment and actual site security," Rachel reported through her throat microphone. "Copy that, Professor," Mike replied with obvious annoyance. "The brief is the brief. We stick to the plan." Rachel studied the compound more carefully through her night vision equipment. The electronic signatures she was detecting suggested the presence of advanced communication equipment that hadn't been mentioned in the mission briefing. The guard behavior patterns indicated a level of training that exceeded typical terrorist organization capabilities. Team leader requests permission to conduct extended reconnaissance before infiltration, Rachel transmitted. Negative, Torres. We're going in fast and hard. Stay with the program. But Rachel's analytical instincts were screaming warnings. She had read every after-action report from recent special operations missions, studied every tactical development coming out of ongoing conflicts. The compound's security profile looked exactly like the sophisticated terrorist networks that had been causing problems for Allied forces in recent operations. As Mike led the team toward the primary infiltration point, Rachel made a decision that would either end her military career or save her teammates' lives. She broke off from the planned route, moving to an observation position that would give her a better view of the compound's complete security layout. Torres, get back in formation immediately. Patterson's voice crackled through her earpiece from the exercise control room. Sergeant, I believe the threat assessment is incorrect. The compound shows signs of advanced operational security not covered in our briefing, Rachel replied, her voice steady despite the career-ending nature of her insubordination. Return to your team now, or you're out of the program, Patterson commanded. But Rachel's analysis had been correct. As Mike's team approached the compound, motion sensors that hadn't been mentioned in the briefing detected their movement. Floodlights illuminated the infiltration route, and exercise controllers began simulating enemy response that would have resulted in immediate capture or elimination of the entire team. Mike's voice came through the radio, panic replacing his earlier confidence. We're blown. Multiple tangos responding to our position. Request immediate extraction. Rachel was already moving. Her extended reconnaissance had identified security vulnerabilities that the standard approach had missed. There was a maintenance access point on the compound's north side that was covered by the floodlight system, but not by direct observation. More importantly, her analysis of the guard rotation patterns had revealed a 4-minute window when that section would be unmonitored. Team leader, I have eyes on an alternate infiltration route, Rachel transmitted. We're pinned down here, Professor. Whatever you've got, we need it now. Rachel had identified more than just an alternate route. Her cultural and linguistic training had allowed her to understand the role-playing enemy forces in ways that her teammates couldn't. She had been listening to their radio communications and had identified their command structure and response protocols. The enemy commander is coordinating response from the main building's second floor, she reported. Their communication protocols indicate they're using a centralized command structure with predictable response patterns. Using this intelligence, Rachel was able to guide her team through the compound's security net by predicting enemy movements and exploiting gaps in their coverage. Her approach wasn't faster or more aggressive than the original plan, but it was based on superior understanding of the tactical situation. Within 30 minutes, she had led the team to the simulated hostages, gathered the required intelligence, and identified an extraction route that avoided enemy patrols. The mission was completed without any team member being killed or captured, something that had never been achieved in this particular exercise scenario. The debriefing room was silent as the exercise controllers reviewed the recordings. Rachel's tactical analysis had been perfect, her intelligence gathering exceptional, and her ability to adapt to unexpected threats had saved what should have been a catastrophic mission failure. Patterson stood at the front of the room, his expression a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. Torres, your analysis was correct, and your execution was flawless, but your failure to follow the established plan put the mission at risk. Sergeant, the intelligence briefing contained significant gaps that created false assumptions about the threat environment. The compound's actual security capabilities exceeded the briefed parameters by approximately 200%. Following the original plan would have resulted in mission failure and potential team casualties. Patterson paused, considering her words. Rachel's analysis had been brilliant, and her tactical innovations had achieved mission success where conventional approaches would have failed. "Torres, explain your intelligence assessment to the class," he finally said. Rachel moved to the briefing board, her academic background evident as she broke down the security patterns she had observed, explained the communication intercepts that had revealed enemy capabilities, and demonstrated how cultural understanding could provide tactical advantages that purely military approaches missed. The other candidates listened with growing respect. Mike, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by professional curiosity, asked detailed questions about the intelligence-gathering techniques Rachel had used. Luis wanted to know how she had identified the guard rotation vulnerabilities so quickly. "The key is understanding that modern special operations requires as much cultural intelligence as it does tactical skill," Rachel explained. "Physical capabilities are still essential, but the ability to understand and predict enemy behavior is becoming more critical in complex operational environments." Over the following weeks, Rachel's methods began to influence the entire program. Her approach to intelligence analysis, combined with her innovative tactical solutions, started appearing in other candidates' mission planning. Patterson began incorporating her techniques into the official curriculum. The final exercise was a realistic scenario based on actual ongoing operations. Rachel's team was tasked with infiltrating a terrorist safe house in a simulated urban environment to gather intelligence about planned attacks against American interests. It was the kind of mission that special operations forces were conducting regularly in combat zones around the world. Rachel was assigned as the intelligence specialist, a role that typically involves supporting the team leader's decisions without question. But as they developed their operational plan, Rachel's analysis revealed problems that the others hadn't considered. The target safe house was located in a densely populated civilian area where American military personnel would be immediately recognizable. Standard infiltration techniques would likely result in discovery and potential civilian casualties. But Rachel's language skills and cultural knowledge offered possibilities that conventional approaches couldn't achieve. "I can get inside as a local civilian," she proposed during mission planning. "My Arabic is fluent, and I understand the cultural protocols well enough to blend in completely." Mike, who had been designated team leader, was skeptical. "That puts you in there alone with no backup. Too risky." "The intelligence we need is time-sensitive," Rachel replied. "A direct military approach will alert the targets and probably result in mission failure. This way, I can gather the information without compromising the operation." The debate continued for hours. Rachel's plan was unconventional and placed her at significant personal risk, but it offered the best chance of mission success. Finally, Patterson made the decision to let her attempt the civilian infiltration approach. Rachel spent 2 days preparing her cover identity, studying the local area, and perfecting her civilian appearance. When she finally approached the target area, she was indistinguishable from any other local woman seeking assistance for her displaced family. Her infiltration was flawless. She gained access to the safe house by presenting herself as a refugee seeking help with official documents, a common enough request that the terrorists didn't question her presence. Once inside, her language skills and cultural knowledge allowed her to gather intelligence that no amount of traditional surveillance could have obtained. She learned about planned attacks, identified key personnel, and discovered weapons caches that weren't known to military intelligence. More importantly, she did all of this without alerting the targets to any security breach. "How did you get them to trust you so completely?" Patterson asked during the final debriefing. "I became someone they wanted to help rather than someone they needed to fear," Rachel replied. People will share anything with someone they see as part of their community. When graduation day arrived, Rachel Torres stood at the top of her Special Operations Training Course class. Not because she was the strongest or most aggressive candidate, but because she had proven that intelligence and cultural understanding were more valuable than pure physical capability in modern special operations. Colonel Susan Martinez, the commanding officer of Military Intelligence Special Operations, presented her with the Distinguished Graduate Award. Staff Sergeant Torres represents the future of special operations, she told the assembled crowd. She has shown us that the operator who understands the human terrain will always outperform the operator who relies solely on tactical superiority. Rachel's techniques were quickly incorporated into special operations doctrine across all branches of the military. Her approach to intelligence gathering, once seen as too academic and risky, became the foundation for next-generation special operations methodology. Years later, when asked about her success in special operations training, Rachel would always credit her professors at Ohio State. "They taught me that every culture has its own logic," she would say. "You just have to be patient enough to understand it before you try to operate within it." The quiet analyst from small-town Ohio, who had been dismissed as too weak and academic, had revolutionized modern special operations. She had proven that in an era of complex cultural environments and sophisticated enemies, the greatest advantage comes not from superior firepower, but from superior understanding of the human elements that drive every conflict.